So, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the first Buddhist Chaplaincy Speaker Series of the year. And I'm so delighted to welcome Kim Gross-Moore, who's joining us today. Kim is a former student of the Sati program. Yay! So I celebrate that, and we were just chatting, and she told me she was here, taking the classes 10 years ago. It's the decade anniversary. So that's something to celebrate. I was looking at Kim's bio on the website and realizing that so Kim is with the organization Guiding Rage into Power, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with, called GRIP. And she first heard about it in 2014 while she was on the Sati program. She subsequently trained as a GRIP facilitator, and then 5 years later became the executive director of the organization. Jump in, Kim, if I'm saying something completely wrong. And then managed to expand the program into the correctional training facility at Soledad in California, where she continues to facilitate today. So other things that Kim has done is that she's co-founded the Partners in School Innovation, one of the very first AmeriCorps programs in the country. She was the executive director of the San Francisco Organizing Project, where she worked with faith and community leaders to secure policy changes in affordable housing, healthcare, immigration, and violence prevention. So Kim currently lives in San Jose, California, with her teenage daughter and too many pets. I'll leave that up to everybody to decide how many is too many. I've got a pretty high bar for how many is too many. So, Kim, I'll pass it over to you. Welcome, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much. Yes, hopefully my dog will not bark and interrupt this next hour and a half. And my teenage daughter is doing a SAT prep tutorial session in the house. So hopefully she's not going to come out and have questions for me or anything. So good morning, and I am so grateful to be here. Really. It feels like coming home to be in this space. I'm deeply grateful to Sati and the Sati Center and IMC and this Buddhist chaplaincy community. Personally, I've grown so much through my engagement with this community, and I've received so much care here. So thank you for inviting me and holding the space for this community and this conversation. It's kind of it's a virtual challenge. It's a speaker challenge. There's sort of the awkwardness of the screen and the speaker says stuff, when really in spiritual care, we're creating interconnection. And, if we were in person, I would want us to be, I'd have us sitting in a circle and, maybe bow or shake hands with everybody, each one of you, to make that connection. And, we might have a round of check-ins, and we would build a welcoming and supportive container to hold whatever might emerge through this engagement. So we're going to do the best we can in this setting that also has its advantages. So, we didn't have to travel to come to this. There may be folks here who live far away, and we're also keeping each other safe and healthy by doing this virtually. So maybe we can take a minute just before I dive into, talking about stuff. We can just take a moment to create our virtual container and imagine that we're sitting in a circle, and do a little bit of breathing and meditation together, grounding together. So we can't really, or I'm not sure if anybody can see other faces, but maybe if there is a way on your screen to take a look at someone else and just appreciate yourself and anyone else you see for being here this morning. And welcome again. Good morning. Let's take a few breaths together. So you can close your eyes if you would like to, if you feel comfortable, or you can rest your gaze however you feel works for you in this moment. And allow your body to rest in its seat and your nervous system to settle. And take a couple of long, slow, deep breaths. Maybe inviting the out breath to be a little longer than usual. And if the breath is a comfortable place to rest your attention, then go ahead and do so. Sometimes, especially in a prison setting where there's kind of the cultural norm of violence and trauma, focusing attention on the breath and the body can be difficult, even destabilizing. So, I also want to offer to you other places that you can rest your attention that similarly allows for settling of the nervous system and the development of mindfulness. So, if your eyes are open, just become aware of colors in your environment. You can even quietly name them: green, yellow. That's helpful. Maybe the shapes also around you. And if your eyes are closed, you can allow sounds to come into the forefront of your awareness. Rustling, maybe a bird sing song. Sound of my voice. So you can be curious for yourself what of the various options feel right for you right now to settle, to rest, to come into greater awareness of this moment. And now bring your hands together and rub them together to gently create some heat. And when you feel some warmth, some heat between your palms, rest your hands on your heart and breathe the warmth in. Feel the warmth in your heart space and the connection between your hands and your chest. Maybe it's possible for that warmth to spread a little bit in your body too. So feel the goodness of these moments that you have given to yourself and to our community here. Thank you. So I will take a few minutes to introduce GRIP, Guiding Rage into Power, and the GRIP Training Institute, and then share a little bit about my journey from, to the chaplaincy training that I did in the in when was it, 2020, 2014, and then I really would like to share more about, or focus more today on, spiritual care and the Dharma in prisons and in the relationship between prisons and outside community, more as an exploration and hopefully a conversation with you guys. So GRIP, Guiding Rage into Power, is a nonprofit community-based organization serving primarily people who have been incarcerated in state prisons for having committed serious and violent crimes. And it's a 104-hour intensive 12 to 14 month program that has four elements: cultivating mindfulness, developing emotional intelligence, stopping your violence, and understanding victim impact. And it's a journey over the course of many, many months together. There are 35,000 lifers in the state of California alone, people serving life sentences for having committed serious and violent crimes. It costs more than $125,000 a year to incarcerate one person, which means that California taxpayers are paying more than $4 billion a year to incarcerate just this population. So not only is this a huge number of people and a huge cost for society, but also when someone goes to prison, they get worse. They get pulled into prison gang politics, end up committing more violence and taking on more antisocial behaviors and beliefs, and experiencing more trauma themselves. A typical lifer will spend 10 to 15 years up at a max level prison, participating in a lot of violent activity just to be accepted or to stay alive themselves before they're able to change course and begin rehabilitation. And meanwhile, the vast majority of victims of violence are left to their own devices and resources to cope with the impact of violence that they and their families experienced and try to heal. So the current system is costly and doesn't make our communities safer. Through more than 25 years of work in the state prisons, we know that there are better solutions. If we can, when we can create a caring and supportive community for incarcerated people who commit to do the work to heal and be accountable for the harm that they've caused, they can develop the inner capacities and skills of mindfulness, emotional intelligence, and understanding the impact of their victims on their victims. And as a result, they will be safe, contributing members of their families and communities. They will be found suitable for release by the parole board to come home to their communities and families, thereby reducing the incarceration rates and costs. And they can be key contributors to the healing journeys of survivors of crime and the prevention of further violence in their communities. So GRIP is a program that demonstrates that possibility. And we have proof of concept. We're in 7 prisons. We serve more than 500 students a year and have had, I can't keep track of the numbers. We keep graduating more. So I think we're at 17 or 1,800 graduates of the program over the last 12 years. Almost 800 of our students, of our graduates, have been released, have come home, and our recidivism rate is less than 2%. And that to us is a low bar. That is not our definition of success. For us, we GRIP graduates become peacemakers. They sign a pledge with vows to do no harm, to be peacemakers, and they come home and they contribute. They are providing services and supporting their families, healthy relationships, doing work with youth, doing work on the streets to support people who are homeless or struggling with addiction. So we know what works, and we know that that there are ways to do this. I first came to this work. So as you heard in in my bio, I had been a community organizer, nonprofit leader, done a lot of work in the community, worked around policy issues and grassroots organizing, and I struggled. I burned out at a certain point. I struggled with the extraordinary amount of trauma that people doing this kind of political activism and community organizing grapple with, and we didn't have the tools to heal ourselves or heal, create a healing community in our own movements. And so that's what drew me to want to do deeper Buddhist study myself and ground myself in a deeper spiritual understanding and training. So that I had been practicing Buddhism, been a student of Gil's for years, and he encouraged me to do the chaplaincy program. And I first learned about GRIP through Gil. And there was a particular moment when some graduates of the GRIP program came and spoke at IMC, and their stories were incredibly moving, beautiful, and powerful stories. And towards the end, one of them, a gentleman named Terrell Merritt, looked into the group, into the audience, those of us sitting there, and basically said, for anybody here in this room who has experienced harm, I want to, on behalf of those of us who have caused harm, I want to offer you my apology. You did not deserve the harm you experienced, and I'm so sorry for what you had to go through. And for me, it was a moment, I experienced it as a genuine apology that I had never heard before and didn't even know that I was longing to hear. And that did something to me. And it was like an example of the Dharma from inside prison coming out and offering insight to me on the outside. That there was a healing journey I needed to embark on for myself. And I'm forever grateful for that moment. It also made me really want to get involved with the program, and I had to do some work to get myself invited to become a trainee facilitator and join the GRIP team, which I eventually did in 2016. Trained as a facilitator with some great people out at a prison in Tracy, DVI, and then worked with the founder, with Jacques Verdun, to bring out the GRIP program to other prisons. Primarily the place I've been working is CTF Soledad. And I also, before even in that time, actually during my chaplaincy program, I volunteered at the Elmwood Jail as a volunteer Buddhist chaplain, and then also with a group from IMC and some sanghas in Santa Cruz to go and provide Buddhist services at Soledad at CTF, where there's a group that goes. A couple people go every week, Tuesday evenings, to offer meditation and Dharma talks, and there's a sangha there that I was a part of for many years. So those are kind of the ways that I have contributed or been a part of prison Dharma, I will say. There's a lot more I could share about GRIP, but I'm not going to today. And if you're really interested, we've gotten some great media recently. There's a couple good pieces in Mother Jones magazine about Guiding Rage into Power, and my wonderful colleague Fatine Jackson and I were recently interviewed in depth for the Deep Transformation podcast that came out last month. So those are a couple of resources I would point you to if you're interested to know more about GRIP and how it works. But I want to focus the rest of our time on spiritual care and the Dharma in prisons and the relationship between prison and outside communities, more as a kind of exploration of mine and hopefully in dialogue with you guys. So, the Buddha talks about care for self, care for others, care for self and others, right? There's kind of that Venn diagram that we're navigating as spiritual care providers, as people in chaplaincy, offering spiritual care, being chaplains. There's a dynamic that we're constantly navigating and moving through. And even that language, offering or providing spiritual care, being a spiritual care provider, being a chaplain, creates separation and creates an identity that can become hardened or problematic. There's a story of the Buddha wandering around after his enlightenment, and he's radiating, right? It's like he's wandering around. He's just had this awakening, and he's walking through, and he's radiating. And people begin to notice, and they ask, who are you? Are you a god? Are you a man? And the Buddha replies, I am awake. And I actually first heard that inside San Quentin. The founder, Jacques Verdun, brought that as a little teaching in a meditation group, and we had a dialogue about it. But what I love is that it shifts to more of an action, to a verb. I am awake. I'm awakening. It's a movement. And so maybe there's a shift here too that I want to offer, that rather than thinking of ourselves, instead of thinking of myself as a chaplain or as a spiritual care provider, maybe I can just rest in spiritually caring for self, spiritually caring for other, and spiritually caring for self and other, the combination. And that's really relevant and important, I think, for anyone interested in being spiritually caring in a prison setting. There's a problematic triangle in the criminal legal system where people are put in boxes and identified as either victim or offender, and then there's the judge, right? So there's a triangle: victim, offender, and judge. And it keeps people separate. It creates a hierarchy: who's superior, who's inferior. And these can become hardened identities that get in the way of real healing and repair and transformation. Because no one is only a victim. No one is only an offender. We talk about one of the most powerful things that we can say when we're at the very beginning of a GRIP tribe, of a circle that meets, that you are not your crime, that we see you for, your full humanity, not only because of, by what you did. There's also, you can replace the judge. So there's victim, offender, judge, but it can become problematic if you insert helper in there, or, it can become savior. Like, what am I doing? What is someone doing going into prison or going into offer spiritual care? Is there kind of a way that we can hold ourselves or carry as that, it's like we're going in to be the savior, to be the helper that makes it happen, that somehow actually we get caught up in the game of conceit, in like, am I better than or less than or equal to you? And so part of what I have found in my own journey in this work is really about how to get out of that game of conceit entirely and to be spiritually caring and pay attention to the movement between those different parts of the triangle. So one important condition for healing and transformation possibly to arise is simply compassionate witness. And being able to see someone fully for their humanity, their particular humanity, their story, their particular suffering, and the universality of the pain, the shame, the anger, the woundedness as part of the human condition. So moving between the particular of my story and self and the particular of other story and self, and then the dynamic that happens between us, the self and other. So can I see myself in you? Can I see you also as a unique human being? So when I'm sitting in a circle with grip folks inside the prison, there's a movement between these points in the triangle. I'm paying attention, and I'm a fellow traveler on this journey with people who have been impacted by the justice system. We have a network of people who've experienced violent crime, who come in as survivors, as surrogate survivors, and engage in healing dialogues. There are people on our staff who have both committed harm and have survived harm and have had both. That the vast majority of the people who we work with who have committed really serious, really violent crimes have also been victims in their lives. They have experienced harm themselves. They have experienced abuse. They have had loved ones die through violence. So it's this mix, right? So when I'm sitting in circle, trying to be spiritually caring, attending to myself and the other and us together, I work to hear a story, and sometimes I'm feeling the deep empathy and compassion fully for the person. I'm seeing their pain of their father beating their mother in front of them, and I can fully be there to witness, to provide compassionate witness for them in their full humanity. Other times, I feel myself as the woman whose neck has been broken by the man sitting next to me. And I have to go inside to tend to this self, this being who is resonating with the harm, and check in with myself to see what does this being need in order to be able to then come back into that engagement with each other. And then sometimes I can hold the whole and see and understand where each of us is, right, at any given moment in that triangle. So I'm sharing this to kind of give you a sense of kind of what is it like? What does it feel like to be in a setting where we're not in fixed identities, but we are in a container that is allowing for the emergence of awakening, right? Of healing, of accountability, of deep seeing, right? Humanity. So there's a lot of Dharma in prison communities. There's incredible healing and accountability work that's going on. There are folks building safe spaces and community in the midst of really dark, violent institutions. And folks are seeking insight, healing, accountability, spiritual awakening, and they're offering care also. There's the title of our course book is Leaving Prison Before You Get Out. So there's a lot of folks that are leaving prison before they get out. And one of my early experiences actually going into San Quentin early on, before I started with GRIP, I got to sit in a circle and hear some of these, some men from San Quentin were reading some of their stories of, you know, they go through in some of these programs. There's a number of community-based programs that support trauma healing. And I happened to be with a different one, and some men were reading these unfinished business letters or trauma pain stories that they write out and then process with one another. And I was hearing some that were just so incredibly moving, that the level of of self-awareness and then forgiveness that was kind of coming out was just extraordinary. And I went up to one of the guys afterwards and said, "Oh my God, it's so amazing. You guys are doing such incredible work. And how can I support you? And, you know, what can I do?" And he just looked at me and he said, "Yeah, I know we're doing good work. We're doing it here. What are you guys doing on the outside?" And again, it was a moment of like, oh, right, like we got to do our own work. Like we got to deal with what's happening on the outside. Like there's some great stuff. They don't need us to come in and like bring the Dharma into them, right? It's like, no. There is like incredible Dharma happening, incredible liberation happening in the midst of incredible violence in these institutions. And so we really are fellow travelers. And I think of it as, you know, when I go in, I am a fellow traveler longing for freedom myself. I'm not geographically incarcerated, but, you know, the prison between our ears, as Jacques would talk about, right? And so there's a shared dedication to a practice towards liberation that really is, I think maybe I'd like to imagine a spiritual kinship, maybe. So I want to share, if it's okay, I want to actually go through and do a little sutta study with you guys, using probably the most commonly used sutta for prison ministry, which is the Angulimala story that many of you, maybe all of you know, but I thought it would be fun for us to go through it. It's been a powerful one that I have unpacked over the years, and that there's a number of elements. There's like 3 or 4 chapters to it. And I find myself, as the longer I do this work with folks who have been justice impacted or been incarcerated, or I find different parts of it emerge and I get insight. And so I'd like to go through 3 main parts of the sutta and explore it together, and invite you to pay attention in yourself to where do you notice yourself moving towards, like where do you kind of identify, and also where do you resist? Like, is there a character in the story that you more resonate with, or a moment in it that you resonate with or that you resist? And we can kind of play around, and I hope it, maybe there's a way, if I'll go through it, and hopefully we can stop a couple of times and I can ask for comments. And I might need a little bit of help if I can't see people raising their hands, or you know, if you have something to say. So I might need a little help with calling on folks. Will that work? You think we can do it? Yes? Okay. Okay, so I'm going to use I'm looking at, sorry, get my notes here. The Majjhima Nikaya, the Middle-Aged Discourses, the Bhikkhu Bodhi translation. It's Sutta 86, the Angulimala. And so we'll start with basically, you know, I'll kind of read some and summarize some. So it starts with, so there was a bandit in the realm of King Pasenadi of Kosala named Angulimala, who was murderous, bloody-handed, given to blows and violence, merciless to living beings. Villages, towns, and districts were laid waste by him. He was constantly murdering people, and he wore their fingers as a garland. So Angulimala means finger necklace. So he would cut off their fingers and wear them as a necklace. So that's how he is introduced. So lots and lots of people have been victimized by him, are terrified of him, and when the Buddha goes, starts to walk around in that community, many people stop him and say, "Don't go down that road. Angulimala is this murderous, violent man. It's not safe. Don't go down the road." So over and over again, he's warned. The Buddha is warned, "Don't go down that road." But the Buddha continues on, and the bandit Angulimala saw the Blessed One coming in the distance, and he thought to himself, "Isn't it wonderful? I've been able to kill so many men, and now there's just this one guy coming along, this recluse. It'll be so easy. I can kill him." So Angulimala then took up his sword and shield, buckled on his bow and quiver, and followed close behind the Blessed One. Then the Blessed One performed such a feat of paranormal power that the bandit Angulimala, though running as fast as he could not catch up with the Blessed One. So he's trying to figure out what's happening, what is going on. He can't figure it out, so he stops and calls out to the Blessed One, "Stop, recluse, stop." And the Buddha says, "I have stopped, Angulimala. You stop too." So the Angulimala then addresses the Blessed One in stanzas thus: "While you are walking, you tell me you have stopped. But now when I have stopped, you say I haven't stopped." And the Buddha says, "Angulimala, I have stopped forever. I abstain from violence towards living beings, but you have no restraint towards things that live. That is why I have stopped and you have not. And then, having heard your stanza teaching me the Dhamma, I will indeed renounce evil forever." So Angulimala throws away his sword and his weapons, and he drops to his knees in front of the Buddha. And the Buddha, sage of great compassion, teacher of the world, says these words, "Come, bhikkhu." So let me stop. That's chapter 1, or that's the first part. Let me stop and just hear from a couple people maybe what's happening here, or what happened. Anybody want to take a crack at like what this is a transformative moment, right? So what do you get from it? Shannon? You're muted. You'll have to unmute.
One day I'll get used to doing that. To me, it was this kind of something very different happened, right? The Buddha turns. I mean, one, Angulimala can't catch up with him, but when he turns and says, "I stopped," there's this place where I imagine that it's so different than what he's experienced before, that there's this opportunity for an awakening in that moment, because you're having to move out of the usual way of doing things. So to me, that kind of opens this door to, I'll say, a mini awakening. But that's kind of what that piece reminds me of.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Yeah. Carol?
I think connection has happened.
Mm.
Human connection, that magic connection that happens between living beings.
Mm. Any like, how did that happen?
I don't know. Magic. I don't know. I don't. even when it happens to me in this lifetime, it feels like magic. I don't quite know.
Mhm.
So I'm not
Okay.
sure how to answer that.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. I see two other hands, and then we'll do the next chapter. So is it Heiko? Is that how you say your name? Uh-huh.
Heiko,
Heiko.
hearing the word connection, I realize the idea of being with or seeing. And by that is just he stops and looks at Angulimala instead of running in a head full of pre-set images or past experience ideas. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful. Peter?
I was talking to Nellie the other day about Angulimala, and she said something that was so lovely about this part of the story is like the second nature turns around and goes the other way away from harm, the Buddha's like, great, you're one of us. Like you are a wise one. No resistance towards the direction of wholeness, right? And so, anyways, Nellie was saying that, and so I really loved it.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I love it. So yeah, so all of these insights that you're pulling are just beautiful. And in a sense, like a little bit what the Buddha does is he uses a koan, right? So like he gives Angulimala this thing that like challenges him, breaks him out of like, wait, what? That then allows for insight. And then and the Buddha treats him with respect, with dignity, with humanity, sees him, right? Turns to him and addresses him, doesn't only see him as a murderer, but creates the possibility for something to emerge that gives, the opening for him to become a bhikkhu, right? Okay, so we're going to go on. So now chapter 2 has to do with the king. So now Angulimala, he's the last part. He's then, come bhikkhu. So then the Buddha brings him into the community of the monks without asking anybody. He's now part of the community. So then, I don't know how much longer later this is. Now on this occasion, crowds of people are gathering at the gates of King Pasenadi's inner palace, very loud and noisy, crying, "Sire, the bandit Angulimala is in your realm. He is murderous, bloody-handed, given to blows and violence, merciless to living beings. Villages, towns, and districts have been laid waste by him. He is constantly murdering people, and he wears their fingers as a garland. The king must put him down." So the king is getting some pressure from his constituents. There's a lot of people who are hurt and afraid and angry. And the king needs to do something. So he goes looking for Angulimala with all of his cavalry of 500 men, sets out to look for him, and comes across the Buddha and, pays homage to the Buddha. The Buddha asks, "Why are you here? What's going on?" And the king says, "There is a bandit in my realm named Angulimala who is murderous, bloody-handed, given to blows and violence, merciless to living beings. Villages, towns, and districts have been laid waste by him. He is constantly murdering people, and he wears their fingers as a garland. I shall put him down, venerable sir." And the Buddha says, "Great king, suppose you were to see that Angulimala had shaved off his hair and beard, put on the yellow robe, and gone forth from the home life into homelessness, that he was abstaining from killing living beings, from taking what is not given, and from false speech, that he was eating only one meal a day and was celibate, virtuous, of good character. If you were to see him thus, how would you treat him?" And the king says, "Venerable sir, we would pay homage to him. We would, treat him well. We would arrange for him lawful guarding, defense, and protection. But venerable sir, how could such an immoral man, one of evil character, ever have such virtue and restraint?" And so the Buddha points over to the side, points to one of the, monks sitting there happily meditating and says, "Well, there he is. Great king, this is Angulimala." And the king is frightened, alarmed, terrified, doesn't believe him. And the Buddha has to kind of take him along, hold his hand, say, it's okay. Don't be afraid, great king, don't be afraid. There's nothing for you to fear from him. And so then the king goes over and tries to like ascertain it. Is this for real? Like, is Angulimala, is this really Angulimala? And like tests him to see, is his like lineage right? Does he know the right answers to the question of who his parents are or whatever? And is satisfied that, oh, this is Angulimala. And so then he says, rest content. I shall provide you robes and alms food and resting place, and calls him a noble lord. And the king goes back to the Buddha and says, Venerable Sir, we ourselves could not tame him with force and weapons, yet the Blessed One has tamed him without force and weapons. And now, Venerable Sir, we depart. We are busy and have much to do. And the king goes off and drops the whole thing of looking for, to I shall put him down. He drops that. Okay, so that's chapter 2. So let's check in. What is happening here? Couple people. I don't see any hands, but I might not be seeing everybody. Are there any hands raised? Ross.
What's happening is the king has been completely stymied. He can't even imagine putting him down. Actually, it reads, I shall never be able to put him down, Venerable Sir. So, so something that the king was unable to do, something that everybody was unable to do, the Buddha was able to do through love, through connection. That's how I see this.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Joanna, and then Zoe. Joanna, you need to unmute. Yeah.
Okay, sorry. I just thought it was interesting that the king doesn't sort of mention any kind of retribution or punishment. He just takes it that the Buddha has obviously connected to Angulimala, and Angulimala has, decided to drop everything and follows the Buddha into robes. But the king, I just wonder about that. Why, as part of the story, he's not saying, this man has still got this history and there's so many people that he's hurt. Why isn't he made to, suffer some retribution? That's my offering.
Yeah. Thank you so much for raising that, because exactly there, it's like the king represents state power, right? Or state, it's like the accountability, criminal accountability. And so what is the sutta telling us about the Buddhist approach to this, right? And how does that feel to us?
Mm-hmm. Mm.
Right? Yeah. Zoe, and then Nellie, and then we'll move on to the last one before the end. Mm-hmm.
And this, I perceive the Buddha really dismantling the othering, the pegging Angulimala in a box of he is this person, and actually saying, actually, he's an amazing monk. He is expressing this entirely different body mind that the emperor couldn't imagine possible. And so by interrupting that narrative, he's offering, and not offering, but just highlighting his humanity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. Mm-hmm. Okay, Nellie, and then we'll move on to the third and final chapter.
I myself was very much surprised reading the story, similarly as Joanna commented, but that the king as the representative of a civil power of a state, of someone who should punish, put down the criminal, had so much respect for the Buddha. So the Buddha was higher authority than the king.
Mm.
And I'm from Christian background, I would say. So it's amazing how Buddhism annihilates the past and puts all the possibility to the present change and future engagement and future direction.
Mm.
It was so touching for me. I was
Mm.
really touched with the story. I didn't know it before we got this for homework.
Mm.
And yeah, it's very this how quickly the king trusted Buddha completely. So it was, he found it settled, arranged. The task was done. A king can now concentrate on more important things for his kingdom. Nah?
Yeah.
And still, this story you read, I mean, the story I read had also the first part, another the childhood of Angulimala.
Yeah. So right. So
He
we didn't.
was,
There is a
yeah,
pre-chat. Right.
yeah, because he was raised in a very normal family with
Mhm.
very good, and healthy psychological background. He was not abused as little child,
Mm.
or at a certain
Mhm.
point he was not prepared for real life, but he was a healthy young person psychologically. So there was a healthy seed within his psyche
Mm.
before he became a criminal. And maybe that's what I thought, at this special point when he changed for the better, there was some resonance with the healthy part of his human being.
Yeah, he was
Maybe
able
in
to
some,
kind of
yeah,
find that authentic or that true that
yeah,
part of
maybe it's
him. Yeah.
much more difficult in a kind of a person who's violent because he was abused and he only knows violence since early childhood, might be even greater challenge.
Yeah, possibly. Thank you. Okay, so I want to get to the last chapter because I actually found this last piece that I want to get to, I have found most on my mind recently in my work, or sort of as I've kind of, continue to do this work, what's been challenging for me. So the last chapter, so actually I'm going to skip, there's a whole section I'm going to skip, but there's a point towards the end of this sutta where Angulimala, he's been practicing diligently, doing a lot of, meditation, a lot of practice. And it says that before long, dwelling alone, withdrawn, diligent, ardent, and resolute, the venerable Angulimala, by realizing for himself with direct knowledge, here and now, entered upon and imbibed in that supreme goal of the holy life. So he reaches an even deeper point of enlightenment, of awakening, and he's now referred to as Venerable Angulimala, became one of the Arhants. So then it's morning. The Venerable Angulimala, dressed and taking his bowl and outer robe, went into Savatthi for alms. And what happens? On that occasion, someone threw a clod and hit the Venerable Angulimala's body. Someone else threw a stick and hit his body. Someone else threw a pot shard and hit his body. With blood running from his cut head, with his bowl broken, and with his outer robe torn, the Venerable Angulimala goes back to the monastery. So people have recognized him. People have, the townsfolk see the murderer come. and they throw stuff at him and they chase him out. And the Blessed One saw him coming in the distance and told him, "Bear it, Brahma, bear it, Brahman. You are experiencing here and now the result of deeds because of which you might have been tortured in hell for many years, for many hundreds of years, for many thousands of years." So the Venerable Angulimala goes back to meditate, and alone in retreat experiences the bliss of deliverance. So what happens here? Maybe somebody who hasn't spoken yet. Somebody want to? Does anybody feel themselves as one of the characters in this or in any of this? Yes, Gwen.
So I think for me there's a accepting of past karma here, and it brings up a lot of difficult issues. And maybe I'll just leave it at that, unless you have a question you want to prompt me with. But it's the karma and the non-karma is something that I wrestle with a lot. And particularly, I really appreciate Nellie's comment that as far as the narrative goes, we don't have any evidence that he experienced child trauma. Now there's nothing about what made him, or at least in this particular telling, the kind of character that he was for a time. And what comes to my mind with my service work is, mental illness, a brain, so there you have these issues of, and how much of that is karmic and how much of that is under one's control. And so, sorry, I'm kind of jumping ahead, but I'm very, very curious to hear what your thoughts on that in the real world, so to say, in the prison population. In terms of possibility for conversion.
Yeah. Well, so I do want to say, and I know we're at 10, so maybe I'll wrap up, and I know some of you will be able to stay for a little while beyond with me, but to wrap up, that I think this story does raise some fundamental questions around, is redemption possible? And when we read this or when we hear this, what happens inside you? Do you believe that redemption is possible? And are there limits to it? Is redemption possible only for people who've experienced harm as children? Is redemption only allowed for people who commit nonviolent crimes, but a murderer, that's not possible? Or is it a sexual predator, a child molester? Like, are there limits in your own mind and heart to what is possible for redemption? It also, I think you guys have raised the question of like, what should the state do? What is the state's responsibility? State power even if there is redemption, spiritual redemption, should the state still punish? Is there still something that is expected of state power, or is it okay to only look forward? These are difficult things to wrestle with, right? And then lastly, I think what this last piece is what about the victims? What about the survivors? And I noticed for myself a couple of years ago when I reread and I heard this, and the piece that really got me was that Angulimala experienced the bliss of deliverance. And I noticed for myself, I was like, wait a second, how come he gets it and I don't? And I realized that I was identifying with the villagers. And I was like, well, okay, Angulimala is great. He's a monk. Great, he's doing this. But like, hang on, he shouldn't get more than I get. I never committed murder. Like, how come I'm not getting bliss? So it's like awakening for me to realize the limits of like my compassion in that moment, and the ways that sometimes I'm playing the role of maybe Buddha in when I, or, it's like spiritual, providing spiritual care and opportunity. And sometimes I'm being the judge or like offering rehabilitation. And sometimes I'm the villager that's like restricting in my own mind the possibility for liberation for someone who's caused harm. So with that, I'm going to stop and turn it back to you to wrap up. Thank you. Sorry to go over a little bit.
Not a problem at all. Thank you so much, Kim. Really wonderful. Thank you for coming today. Thank you for bringing these beautifully engaging themes into this space, into our community, to the group. I know many of the current students will be very happy to be focusing on Angulimala as well, since it has been part of their homework too. And I think the in-person students, it's coming on the horizon, so it's a little extra treat there. Yeah, and thank you everybody. It's just wonderful to feel this community coming back together every month in the way that we do. A reminder that this program is freely offered in the spirit of generosity, and any donation that you can offer to continue making these teachings available is greatly appreciated. So I'm going to put the link in the chat for any donations you might feel moved to make today. Thank you. So I wish you all well. I wish you all a happy weekend. If the students of the Buddhist Chaplaincy training, present and past, would like to hang back behind, you're very welcome. And that extends to the eco-chaplaincy students, present and past as well. I think we have at least one among us. So everybody else, have a wonderful, wonderful day. And thank you again, Kim.
Thank you.